Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters in Islam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we begin today's event, let us send our blessings on the Prophet and his family with a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend today's event entitled the Tafsir of the Quran and its evolution. And we are honored to have Brother Jaffer Ladak here with us today, who will enlighten us in this topic, inshallah. To start things off, as ever, I would like to call upon Brother Husnain Lalji to bless this event with the recitation of the Holy Quran. So can you please welcome him with a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهنوا فيدهنون ولا تطعوا كل حلاف مهين هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للغير معتد أثيم قتل بعد ذلك زنيم أن كان ذا مال وبنين إذ تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين سنسمه على الخرطوم إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون فطاف عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون صدق الله العلي العظيم Noon, I swear by the pen and what the angels write. By the grace of your Lord you are not mad, and most surely you shall have a reward never to be cut off. And most surely you conform yourself to sublime morality. And you shall see, and they too shall see, which of you is afflicted with madness. Surely your Lord best knows him who errs from his way, and he best knows the followers of the right course. So do not yield to the rejectors. They wish that you should be pliant, so they too would be pliant. And yield not to any mean swearer, defamer going about without slander, forbidder of good, outstepping the limits, sinful, ignoble, besides all that base born. Because he possesses wealth and sons, when our communications are recited to him, he says, stories of those of yore. We will brand him on the nose. Surely we will try them as we tried the owners of the garden when they swore that they would certainly cut off the produce in the morning, and were not willing to set aside a portion for the poor. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim.
Ya Santos' name. May Allah give you the reward for all your hard work. Okay, so before I pass over to Brother Jaffer Ladak, let me just brief you guys on what he has achieved so far in his life. So Brother Jaffer Ladak was born in Milton Keynes and started working in 2001. In 2003, he set up his own medical recruitment agencies, and according to the Times 100 list, it was one of the fastest growing recruitment agencies in the UK. He started, mashallah, of course. He started lecturing in 2005 all over the world in places such as Africa, United States, Canada, and many more. He's also led Hajj groups and Ziyarat groups as well. In 2011, he published his first book entitled The Hidden Treasure, a biography and analysis of the life of Lady Kulthum. Brother Jaffer also has a weekly Tafsir show on Monday nights on Ahlulbayt TV, channel 842 on your Skybox. He also studies privately under a student of Ayatollah Kamal Haydari and Ayatollah Sadiqi Tehrani. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Brother Jaffer Ladak, and can we please welcome him with a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah Rahim. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Again, I'd like to take the opportunity to apologize for our tardiness, my own delays on the train and the traffic, all conspired against us, but with your patience, inshallah, hopefully this event will be even more successful than what it was going to be in the first place, inshallah. Thank you very much for the invite. I look forward to discussing something which, for me personally, is something that I consider to be one of the most important subjects within the sphere of the Holy Quran, but also in regards to planning our own future. And the reason why I say that, considering we're standing in front of a group which is, promoting itself as an academic source of guidance as well as religious. We don't normally separate, but the idea of being in the institution that we are in, obviously what we want to do is talk about things from a very academic perspective, and we're talking about a generation here that's going to lead the future. And therefore, again, from this perspective, the discussion at hand, you can see that we ourselves are going to be the ones driving these thought processes. We're going to be the ones driving the issue at hand, because we're talking specifically about the future of the Holy Quran. So, basically, what I want to do is just go over some background issues to bring us all to a level where we're all cognizant of how the sciences of Quran work. Some of us may have more knowledge of how the sciences of Quran are, and some of us may be able to come together and understand how Quran itself and all the facets of the Quran are derived. So the sciences of the Quran, as you'll probably know, is called the ulum of Quran. The ulum of Quran is the overall spectrum, the title which is given to the study. Therefore, when we say tafsir, tafsir is within the sciences. It's one of the sciences of the Quran. It is not the only science of Quran. And therefore, the overall, the broad spectrum is called the ulum of Quran. Now, I've just kind of broken down the ulum of Quran into 4 stages here, or 4 facets. And within there, kind of emphasize what comes within those 4 facets. So we will study the general principles of the Holy Quran. We will ask ourselves what are the names and numbers of the chapters, the general contents, and that will make up kind of the backdrop of the Holy Quran. And then we'll go into the history, and we'll try to understand everything from the perspective of what has come to date. So the history itself doesn't just look backwards at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. The history of the Quran obviously comes up to how we have understood Quran until to date. And then there's the issues of recitation. Here is something where we've become quite stagnant on as a community. Now, I can't speak about all communities. I would probably look at my own community, coming from the Khoja community, and again probably go more granular and look at the Milton Keynes community, and say that when it comes to Shahr Ramadan, and the emphasis of recitation of Quran is placed upon us, the competitions, the emphasis are all based around the style of recitation. It's all based upon the quality of the tajweed that is pronounced. It's all based upon these sorts of facets. Now that's very important, But that doesn't mean that we should curtail our entire thinking based around this facet of the recitation. And then we'll come to the other facet, which is miracles. And we have the belief in the Shia school of thought that there has never been any distortion, never any alteration. Every single harakah that is placed within the Holy Quran is as it is supposed to be. There has never been, and in terms of the actual Quran itself, there shall never be any distortion until the end of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself talks about this many times in the Quran, where he says, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَتْ, that his words have been completed in his own way. And we often talk about the issue of science. Now the reason why I'll mention this in a little bit more depth now is because these will bring up the facets of the future. So when we talk about science within the miracles of the Quran, we normally go to things like how the development of the fetus is taking place within the womb. We talk about how the Holy Quran describes the movement of the planets around the sun and so on and so forth. We talk about how there is the ability to know so much from the fingertip, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He can even recreate the individuality of our fingertips, showing to us 1400 years ago that this is one way of identification, or unique identification. Prophecies. We know there are many prophecies within the Quran that have either come to fruition or are yet to come to fruition. So for example, Surah Al-Rum, in the opening verses of Surah Al-Rum, was a prophecy that was due for fulfillment only within a few years' time. Whereas the Day of Judgment is a prophecy of the Holy Quran that has not yet come to fruition. So that's one that we're still waiting on, as you can imagine. So these are normally the things. If you pick up any basic, general Ulum al-Quran book, these are the kind of things that you would look at a very superficial level. And then what happens is we go into a little bit more depth within Ulum. We'll go into the issues of muhkamat and mutashabihat. We'll talk about how the Quran has clear and allegorical verses and so on and so forth. And those are a little bit deeper in terms of the sciences of Quran. The problem we have here is that every book of Ulum always ends up discussing the history of the Quran. The question I pose to you here is, which book in terms of the Ulum al-Quran have you ever come across, or any Tafsir of Quran have you come across, that is specifying the issues of how Quran will be developed over the next 100 years? What I mean by that is not how Quran itself will prove future sciences. That's not what we're interested in. We'll come back to this point. We're not talking about how Quran will prove future sciences. The issues that are coming out from global warming, the issues that are coming out from cryogenic freezing, the issues that will come out from all these various sciences. We don't mean how Quran itself will end up proving or disproving its own idea on the sciences that will eventually come to fruition. What we mean is, how is the Quran as a book going to be developed over the next 100 years? Because we have the history, but if we're going to speak about the sciences of Quran, we have to come to a point where we're not just looking backwards, we're strategizing going forwards. You see, we do that with everything that we have, with all of our communities, and with all of our businesses. We have a budget, and we say what we'll do is we'll budget for the next 5 years. This is how we envisage growth. We will take on this many number of staff, and these are the projections, and this is when they'll come to full capacity. Or the mosque will say that we envisage that we'll go from 300 families to 500 families in the next 50 years, and therefore we need to plan in advance to be able to house all these families and so on and so forth. We seem to be doing this very basic responsibility of planning the next 100 years in all of our businesses, in all of our communities, in our institutions. The problem I humbly put forward is that as a group, be you a scholarly group, or be you a group of students or thinkers or leaders of the community, we have not yet charted out clearly where Quran is going to go in the next 100 years, and how we ourselves need to lead the development of that. Now here I'm going to pose something very controversial potentially. You may have heard of this as a theory, you may not have. So if you have or haven't, we can discuss it after, challenge it, and so on and so forth. In the books of Usul al-Fiqh, there is Usul al-Fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence. In terms of the discussions at hand, there is normally a question as to which is greater in terms of value, which is greater in terms of weight, Quran or Ahlulbayt. Are they equal, or are they different? Is one before or is one after, and so on and so forth. Based on that principal question, I'll pose you a question and see if you can come back to me with your own thought process. What's greater, Quran or you? Quran. Anyone want to challenge? What's greater? We have this book here, and we have you, the human being. If we have one opinion that says Quran is greater, oh, we're going to have to stop, are we?
Yeah. So,
Let's go.
try to get in the room.
The trials and tribulations of being late.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, just to let you know, there's been